Get ready, Staten Island. It's time to celebrate 5 years of Ferry Hawks baseball. Join us Friday, April 24th through Sunday, April 26th for our first homestand of the season and our 5th anniversary celebration. Score big with $5 tickets. Grab $5 domestic draft beers. Enjoy $5 popcorn. And yes, 2 Nathan's hot dogs for just $5. Visit ferryhawks.com now to lock in your seats.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Taxi.
Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
Walter Sterling, Red Apple Audio Networks with the legendary Michelle Gibson. And Michelle has alternative history information unlike anybody else because she does her homework. She does the research. She backs what she says with facts and solid ideas. Michelle, thank you for being with me tonight. Always a privilege. I have 2 questions to ask you tonight. I have now, thanks to you, kept reading up about the mud flood, which oddly did not appear in any of my history books in junior high and high school and college, but clearly something happened. Could you indulge me and tell me when the mud floods were, your theory on how that happened, and what they did?
I can sure do that, Walter. It's interesting because my research started with sacred geometry and ley lines and tracking those and what I believe was a Moorish civilization. But it gets confusing because of how everything we've been told is fragmented from one actual civilization. And as I started doing my research and I started making videos and somebody was connected to me from the mud flood community. And so prior to that event, I want to say it was probably in early 2019, that wasn't on my radar. But when I watched some of this other content creators' videos, I was like, oh, we're looking at the same things. And so from that point forward, mud flood became part of my hypothesis, if you will, about what's taken place here, which would have been a worldwide event. You can find pictures if you just type in mud flood, you'll have tons of pictures to look at of examples of buildings buried in mud and huge cities with nobody in them. I mean, literally huge cities like Paris, St. Petersburg in Russia, others as well, Moscow in Russia. The evidence is there, but we're not told anything about it. And it wasn't until probably the last, let's say, 10 to 20 years that the whole idea of the mud flood and Tartaria and this missing civilization started to come into awareness. I believe the researchers started in Russia, and that was vast stretches of Russia, China, Japan, Korea. That was all the historical Tartaria, but that's the name this civilization has come down to us as, and so that's how it's best known. And it appears that civilization was wiped off the face of the earth by some cataclysmic event that we've not been told about. And that's what's missing. And we're living on top of the ruins of this highly advanced civilization. We're still using their infrastructure and buildings, your schools, your cathedrals, your museums. It's all from the original civilization, and as well as streetcars and railroads and subways. It's all part of this prior civilization. So it's highly advanced and highly integrated, powered by free energy. And I've become quite familiar with the physical layout of this energy grid because I've been following ley lines across the earth, and I've seen the same things everywhere. You see it in Siberia. You see the same things in Pennsylvania that you see in Siberia. There's a place in Pennsylvania called Boxcar Rocks, which looks incredibly like Gornaya Sharia in Siberia, these massive megalithic blocks, where the one in Gornaya Sharia is called man-made, and in Pennsylvania it's called natural. And that's how it's part of how it's been hidden, especially in the United States, because all of these so-called rock formations are actually megalithic structures, but they've all been called natural. And it's just covering up this huge omission from us to keep this knowledge from us. And, thankfully it's coming out from more than one source.
Yeah, you. But I have a specific question about all of that's really important. The specific question about the mud floods. The mud floods, how deep were these floods, do you think, in these cities that were destroyed? And do you feel there was any not natural event that compelled the mud to show up?
Right. I absolutely feel that it was deliberately caused. And I believe that the destruction of this energy grid caused multiple effects. It caused the mud flood. It caused continents to sink. And so you hear about the sinking of Atlantis taking place thousands and thousands of years ago. I don't think it was thousands of years ago. I think it was hundreds of years ago. And I think the civilization that we hear about connected to Atlantis was this same civilization, highly advanced.
And then the speculation has to go to, if this was not natural, if these energy grids were somehow destroyed, who did that and why?
I think it was done by negative beings with an agenda for world control and domination. And I think that's what we're living in. This system that's been set up to extract energy, whether our energy from work or energy from the resources. You hear about the oil and the gas and coal and iron and all the things that get taken from the earth, I personally believe was part of the original energy grid. And there's a number of different theories out there about what caused this, and some do think it's like a natural cyclical event. I don't see that. I see a long-lasting civilization from ancient to modern, and that I see that same civilization when I look at different places all over the world. So I'm not of the camp that it was natural or cyclical. I believe that things were going great, and humanity was at its highest level, and then something happened to derail that, and evil came in, found a foothold, and we've been living in the world that they've created for us, which I don't believe could have happened. They just can't come in and do that. They had to give us this whole fake story to explain everything and get our consent, because we live in what would be called a free will zone. And so we do have free will, but they have to have our consent for what they've done. And they don't have it because we don't know anything about it.
Right.
And it's starting to come out.
This is Michelle Gibson. Michelle Gibson, how do we find you on YouTube?
My YouTube channel is at Michelle Gibson 8946, and my website /blog is piercingtheveilofillusion.com.
piercingtheveilofillusion.com. Michelle Gibson, Red Apple Audio Networks with Walter Sterling, The Other Side of Midnight.